It is a privilege to be a part of this wonderful moment when Manipal University is getting a Department of History. I was here 1 year back, and that time we had envisaged that it should have a Department of History. We were invited by the Department of Geopolitics, and we thought that it needed a Department of History, and I'm very glad that I'm here today. And thank you very much for inviting me. In the morning, the keynote speaker, Prof. Supender Singh, has already set the stage for my presentation by talking about interactions and going beyond India and look at other regions of Asia. So the topic of my presentation is Connected Histories, Notes Towards an Understanding of Early India-Myanmar Interactions. Regions around the Bay of Bengal were involved in a network of communications, be it trade or religious or both, and areas of cultural interactions could be formed. Contacts were based on the movement across land and sea of objects, of people, and knowledge systems by sea routes and land routes. Buddhism was also one of the conduits that facilitated civilizational linkages and dialogues across the bay. The bountiful land of Suvarnabhumi allured the merchants, and we have in the Jataka stories, particularly we have 2-3 Jatakas which talk about the merchants moving into Suvarnabhumi in search of riches. So according to the Suparaka Jataka, Buddha himself as a master mariner, Mahanavika, steered merchant vessels towards Suvarnabhumi. In the Mahajanaka Jataka, Mahajanaka, the son of a vanished king of Videha, undertook trade in order to make quick money to finance his campaign against the usurper of his father's throne. He embarked on a ship with some merchants which were bound for Suvarnabhumi. Even Susandi Jataka talks about merchants sailing from Bharukacha to Suvarnabhumi. Now, where was this Suvarnabhumi? Normally, this land of gold is identified with mainland Southeast Asia. There are, of course, contestations between two leading places, Thailand and Myanmar. People from Thailand think that Suvarnabhumi is actually located in Thailand. People from Myanmar think that it is located in Myanmar, particularly the lower Myanmar country. But whatever be it, that in the eyes of the Buddhist devotees, throughout the Theravada world, Suvarnabhumi is more than just a name, a mere land of riches and abundance. It is the place where Buddhism was preached, and we have monks, nuns coming into these places for teaching Buddhism. Like the search for the real Suvarnabhumi in countries of Southeast Asia, early 20th century in India also witnessed another kind of search related to Southeast Asia. Professor Singh has mentioned about it in her lecture in the morning. I'll just go into a little bit of details. Earlier generation of nationalist scholarship in India forwarded the idea of Hindu colonies, and you saw our Simajumdar's photograph there where we have Hindu colonies in the Far East written by him, of a vast cultural empire known as Greater India. Measured the strength of the lost Indian state with the present colonial state. In keeping with the aim of popularizing the important history of Indian cultural colonization, the society continued to organize public lectures and exhibitions on Greater India. Scholars encouraged the exhibitions and institutions, and they ungrudgingly lent a large number of drawings, photographs, and antiquities from their own collection to further the cause of Greater India. This provided an ideal context for the appearance of the Journal of the Greater Indian Society from 1934 to 1959, with an interruption from 1947 to 1954. Recently, a very interesting volume, a collection of essays from the Journal of the Greater Indian Society was published by the Nalanda Sri Vijaya Sen Center. So it's a very important collection where they are talking about, they have selected certain essays which talks about India's interaction with Southeast Asia. However, with the archaeological evidence accumulated in the past 40 years, which effectively challenges the views of the Greater Indian Society and their arguments for the dominance of Indian cultural influence in Southeast Asia. Herman Kulke's thesis of looking at convergence on both sides of the Bay of Bengal seems to be more acceptable, as he emphasizes that it was not social distance, but social nearness that was the crucial factor in selecting and adopting certain Indian cultural elements in Southeast Asia. So with this prelude on the linkage of looking at interactions between India and Southeast Asia, it may be stated that our understanding of interactions between early India and early Myanmar does not rest on the models of Greater India and Indianization of Southeast Asia. It has its epistemological moorings to the concepts of cultural convergence and cross-cultural exchanges on interactive principles. Interactions between regions of India and regions of Southeast Asia are a transcultural process. Burma or Myanmar, being a part of Southeast Asian countries, shares the legacy of a long-term connection with India, a relation that had been nurtured from a very early date in both the fields of commerce and culture. Here in this presentation, attempt would be made to view early interactions between India and Myanmar through a few case studies which focus on region-to-region or place-to-region interaction. I shall take up the region-to-region interaction first. I'm talking mostly on Eastern India, and I will be talking about Arakan Southeastern Bengal connection. Now, if you look at the map, the red portion is the Rakhine, the present Rakhine state, which is Arakan. And if you go like Cox's Bazar and little early up there, it is Chittagong, present-day Bangladesh. We call it Southeastern Bengal. And over Chittagong, there is this region called Samatata, which is the present Comilla region. So Southeastern Bengal, I'll be talking a lot of Southeastern Bangladesh, and this comprises two regions. One was Samatata, ancient name was Samatata, which is the Comilla region, and the other is the Chittagong region, which was known as Harikela, because particularly Harikela is very integral to our research, and it had close linkages with the regions of Myanmar, particularly Arakan. Now, Arakan played a vital role in the exchange of cultures and religions between India and Southeast Asia. It was connected with land and sea routes to Bengal in the east. The earliest cities were located on the banks of the Kaladan Valley and were thus open to interactions with India in general and Southeastern Bengal, Comilla and Chittagong in particular. The two formed an environmental continuum with a climate and geography fundamentally different from the Ganga and the Irrawaddy plains. So they were not a part of the central area of the region. So they were far off from the centrality, but therefore the two regions connected with each other very well. Communication was provided by intersecting rivers, facilitating coastal journeys and trade. Overland travel with areas of Myanmar being difficult as the rugged Arakan Yoma closed Arakan off from Burma proper. On the side of Chittagong, the hill tracts acted as a deterrent in smooth communication. This is precisely the reason no coins have been found in the areas of Chittagong hill tracts. The coastal strip that forms the Arakan littoral is nowhere more than 100 kilometers wide before it reaches the Arakan Yoma, leaving the littoral with its many rivers and islands very open to influences from the Bay of Bengal. So this geographical continuum led to frequent movement of peoples between the two areas, and some common cultural practices enmeshed within various direct and braided networks. This manifests itself in the use of a specific script type, shared coinage tradition, and art historical linkages. So I will giving some of the examples of this shared coinage tradition, script, and art historical linkages. The Arakanese Haw. The Arakanese Haw, instead of Haw as the late Brahmi, was used to write the Haw for Harikela in the Harikela coins. Let me explain a little bit. On the left, the letter which we find, this was actually Haw taken from Arakanese script. Now, so for a long time, this could not be properly studied, and so this was read as Yarikela because it looked like Brahmi year. Then later on a close reading of Arakanese inscriptions and this, Professor B.N. Mukherjee, who was my mentor also, he actually read the term Harikela and found that in lots of other inscriptions, this particular ha was used. So you have the prototype from Arakan, which was used in the region of Horikelo. Apart from specific script, the objects of donation to monasteries, as gleaned from inscriptions from both the regions, suggest close interaction between the two regions. Moreover, as mentioned earlier, the coinage tradition was also borrowed from the silver coins of the Chandra rulers of Arakan. So you have the Chandra rulers, the same device of the couchant bull and the tripartite symbol, and their coin is earlier than the Horikelo coinages. So these coins are the only coins among the coins found in Myanmar that bear the names of the kings. The trident motif of the Chandra coinage resembles the Srivatsa already seen on the Pew coins. Thus, it seems to be a Pew Chandras of Arakan and Horikela continuity. Large numbers of silver coins, part of the Horikela series of coinage and datable to the 8th century, with the bull tripartite device, have been found from different vihara complexes in southeastern Bangladesh. The bull tripartite type was the basic type of coinage favored by the Arakan Chandras. The recovery of coins bearing a similar device at Moinamoti marks the extent to which the Arakan coinage tradition was able to penetrate into southeastern Bengal, indicating the region's economic importance and participation of Bay of Bengal trade networks. Coins of Dhamma Vijaya, he was a famous ruler from Arakan, in particular have been found in Samatata. These led numismatists to suggest that perhaps for a brief period of time, Dhamma Vijaya was in control of Samatata. But now we have an inscription which has been studied by Arlo Griffith, which shows that Dhamma Vijaya's political center was in Arakan. And it is that inscription is ordained stone inscription from Arakan, issued by Sri Dharma Vijaya Deva in the 2nd year of his reign. A further observation regarding the shared coinage tradition between Horikela and Arakan relates to coin terminology. The term Tandaka, designating a coin in the inscribed metal, was issued by Devati Deva from Chittagong. Now, this is a unique situation because normally we have inscriptions in copper plate in the Indian context. Even in Arakan and other areas, we have copper plates. But these are the two inscriptions these are land grant documents, but written in vases and were studied by Gaureshwar Bhattacharya. So one is in the Bangladesh National Museum. And on the right, the inscription on the right, it talks about a term called Tandaka. This was a coin term, and it said that the land was being bought with a number of Tandakas. So now there was this question that what is this coin term, because it was unique to the region and it was not known earlier. But Arlo Griffith had drew my attention to this Ananda Chandra Prashasti, where we have the reference to Tandaka as a coin term. So these are all at the same time. So corroborative evidences, and it shows that it has also a shared terminology or nomenclature for the coinages. I'm not going into the details of the inscription because we don't have much time. But what is more interesting is that this Prashasti from Arakan, Chittagong region, which is a famous Prashasti of Ananda Chandra, is written on a script which is known as Siddha Matrika and which was famous in eastern India. So there was this continuity in the scriptal writing of the scripts also. Interestingly, stanza 57 of the same inscription mentions a place called Pilakka Vanaka. And where actually Ananda Chandra caused roadways and causeways to be constructed. So it may be noted that there's a place called Pilak Pathar in South Tripura, a part of ancient Samatata. A Buddhist monastery has been excavated there, and Horikela coins have been found in the nearby Belonia subdivision. Moreover, we have coins with Piraka written on them. So you have this coin where you have the place name. So this idea of writing place names are continued in this region for a pretty long time. And so it also suggests again a connection with Arakan. It may be said that since Pilak was a Buddhist pilgrim site with regular movements of monks, Ananda Chandra made donations for improving roadways and causeways around Pilak for easy access from Arakan. Thus, Pilak, like Mainamati, was within the Buddhist network, although not as grand. The connected histories of Horikela with Arakan can be traced in the text called Manjusri Mulakalpo, dated to around the 8th century CE. Places where the Buddhist goddess Tara was prevalent were referenced. And it is said, and then Tara is realized with the Yaksha king Mahabala in Harikela, Karmaranga, Kamarupa, and the city called Kalasha. Now, this, we know about the place called Harikela is Chittagong. Kamarupa is, of course, Kamrup, Assam, the present-day Assam. And recently, Kalasa has been identified by the Martaban region by Pamela Gutman and others in the lower Myanmar, because you have this, it is called Motamma, and you have these Martaban jars, very famous. So it is on Kalasapura. DC Sarkar also supports the view. Regarding Karmaranga, there was some confusion. DC Sarkar thought that it will be in some part of Myanmar. Arlo Griffith points out, and it is a suggestion from him, that perhaps it could be Arakan, and he had some he has pointed out some evidences for this. Now, thinking about the connectivity, the connected history of Arakan and Southeastern Bengal, and if you look at the localities, the way it is mentioned, Harikela, Kamarupa, and we have, this is not, I'm not discussing it here, but we have a long relation between Chittagong region and Kamarupa. So the idea that Karmaranga could be Arakan can also be thought of, though we are not sure at presently. Now I'll come to the next section of my presentation, where I talk about Bodh Gaya Myanmar linkages. Professor Singh has briefly mentioned about the Buddhist plaques, and my focus will be on those plaques, which also shows us an idea, gives us an idea of connected history. And we all know that it has been, the connected history has been well articulated from different areas. And I will be talking about the ritual practices of offering tablets which spread across Asia. And we know that among the vast repertoire of these molded clay tablets in South and Southeast Asia, there's a specific type which became localized. And this is the type where we have the Bodh Gaya temple type. Where I'm talking about how these practices came into being. And with this map, you can see the regions. This is the Bodh Gaya temple, the shikharas. And this kind of shikharas were replicated in the tablets, which I'm talking about. This is just to give an idea of the mass production of these tablets, because it was produced in such a way that it could gain merit. So anybody could actually make these tablets. Now, coming specifically to this, the enlightenment of the Buddha under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya made this place the highlight of any Buddhist pilgrimage tour. 8 sites associated with the events of the Buddha's life formed the basis of the pilgrimage route. Buddha attained the ultimate here, and so this was the desired place of visit for any Buddhist. Bodh Gaya thus assumed the character of a sacred space worthy of pilgrimage. The prime importance of this site from an early date is well known, and according to legend, the earliest construction of the Mahabodhi temple can be traced back to the royal patronage of Emperor Ashoka in 250 BCE. Over the course of many centuries, however, the temple underwent numerous repairs and renovations by different Buddhist groups before eventually falling into ruin around the 12th century. It was not until the late 19th century that the Mahabodhi temple was substantially restored. Sacred biography inspires belief and practice. In the case of the tablets with depiction of Mahabodhi temple, the motif of the temple inspired belief and finally its adoption into a ritual practice. When pilgrims came to Bodh Gaya, they bought these tablets, offered them to the sacred memory of the Buddha, and took back home as memento, which also signified the completion of pilgrimage. Here we may bring in the patronage showered upon Bodh Gaya by the rulers of the Pagan kingdom. The reign of King Kyanzita, 1084 to 1112, witnesses the first Burmese mission to the Bodhi tree and temple in Bodh Gaya. From the Burmese inscriptions, we learn that there were 3 such missions during the Pagan period with the purpose of repairing the Mahabodhi temple. The last mission took place from 1296 to 1298 CE, while the second cannot be dated. Between, a remarkable event happened in Pagan during the reign of King Jayasingha. He constructed a slightly smaller replica of the Mahabodhi temple at Bagan. For the first time, a full-size temple was built, though there were small-scale illustrations of the temple in clay tablets. It is to be noted that this replication did not stop the Burmese kings to venerate the original. Behind this veneration, there was a political motive. as suggested by Tilman Frasch. In his opinion, a closer look at the Burmese kings reveals that sending for Bodh Gaya was in fact an important act for all those kings who wished to confirm their status and position. For example, Kyanzita had served as an army leader before he placed himself on the throne. So there was this issue of legitimacy linked to patronage to Bodh Gaya temple. Interestingly, from a recent essay by Arsenio Nicolas and on early musical exchange between India and Southeast Asia, we learned that Kyanzita sent musical instruments to Bodh Gaya during the construction of the famous temple, among which were bronze drums together with musicians, singers, and dancers. It seems Kyanzita got together all sorts of precious things and sent a ship with the intent to rebuild the holy Sri Vajra, that is the Vajrashana temple of Bodh Gaya, to buy land, to dig a reservoir, make irrigated rice fields, and others. This highlights, and moreover, he gave drums, frog drums, stringed and percussion instruments. This highlights the possibility of movements of musical instruments from Southeast Asia to South Asia. It is also an indicator of the cultural interactions and exchanges in the Bay of Bengal zone, which did not witness merely the one-way cultural flow from the subcontinent. Always we are being asked that when we are talking about this interaction process, so the most of the examples come from India, that influences going from India, Athad. Hardly do we come very little examples where we have that they are influencing, Southeast Asian regions are influencing on some of our areas of thoughts and things. So this is one very interesting example. And based on minute examinations of true Sanskrit terms, kachapi or lute, or kansha or bell metal or gong, and the derivatives in Sanskrit and the derivatives in Java, Philippines, Thailand, Sulawesi, Cham, and Myanmar, Nicholas demonstrates their presence at important Buddhist centers and Buddhist rituals. How these musical instruments and musical performances were integrated to contemporary religious institutions and establishments have also been discussed by him. He retrieved musical instruments from shipwrecks, implying thereby that musical instruments circulated in the Indian Ocean maritime zone. Coming back to Bodh Gaya temple motif, a study of the vast repertoire of clay-molded tablets in Southeast Asia will reveal that this particular motif is largely represented on the tablets from Myanmar, implying the regular circulation of ideas and people between a center of Buddhism and a region in Southeast Asia. I have studied many tablets from Thailand, and particularly in Peninsular Thailand, but none of these tablets from Peninsular Thailand represent this Shikhara motif. So it is very much localized, mostly in the Myanmar region. With the few examples of such tablets recovered from cave sites in Myanmar, housed in various museums, which betrays a strong connection with Bodh Gaya, this circulation of motif would be studied. The cave sites are Kogun in lower Myanmar, Kyanku near Pagan, and Chittagong in northern Myanmar. We begin with the site of Chittagong in upper Myanmar. Chittagong is a triple-walled site on the east bank of the Irrawaddy. Gordon Lewis nicknamed Chittagong the western capital of the Kadu, that is Kanyan, and honored Thet as the most numerous and cultured people of few times. A few of the tablets from Chittagong are housed in the Victorious and Albert Museum. We may describe two of them. The first one is of a pointed arch shaped and stamped with a deeply sunk low relief impression from a mold. Buddha is seated on a lotus throne in the Bhumisparsha attitude, flanked by two standing figures. Trio is framed in trefoil-headed arches surmounted by stupas, with smaller stupas disposed in the interspaces. It has been dated to 11th century. The second one is also deeply impressed from an intaglio mold with Buddha in Bhumisparsha mudra. In both the cases, Buddha is seated within a structure of the Mahabodhi temple. Representations of the Buddha in a temple-like structure in Bodh Gaya are a hallmark of Bodh Gaya era Buddhism, as replicated, as I mentioned also. The fact that Buddha is seated underneath a structure associated with the site of enlightenment links the image with that important event in the Buddha's life. Replication of the Shikhara of the Mahabodhi temple in the Myanmarese tablets is natural, considering the link it had with Bodh Gaya. Circulation of specific kinds of molded tablets we have already seen in the cave sites, but there was also some commonality in the manufacturing techniques between Bodh Gaya and Myanmar. So here 2 tablets datable to 11th century CE found from Chiangku Cave Temple at Bagan may be discussed. These tablets are stamped with a deeply sunk low relief impression from a mold. The first one shows Buddha in Bhumisparsha, it's broken, Bhumisparsha Mudra, seated beneath a trefoil arch surmounted by an umbrella from which issue slender leafy branches. Numerous small similar Buddhas or portions of Buddhas are repeated in 5 rows. The second tablet, I'm concluding now. The second tablet depicts Buddha seated on a lotus throne in the middle with Bhumisparsha Mudra beneath a pointed arch surmounted by an umbrella. Around the Buddha are the 7 subjects which relates to his life cycle. Another important cave site in Lower Myanmar. This is another example from Chiangku Cave. Another important cave site in rural Myanmar is Kogun, where tablets from different periods are still in situ. One can go and visit Kogun. I had this opportunity, and it is a fabulous site. It is located on the western bank of the Thunlin River, 28 miles north of Mola Mine. The cave is situated in an isolated limestone rock. It has a profusely ornamented entrance hall. Ornamentation is done with clay tablets in, this is the entrance hall, but this is from a later period. Ornamentation is done with clay tablets. In fact, the entire walls and ceilings are covered by tablets of Sukhothai style dated to the 13th to 14th century. The images of Buddha are decorated in royal style. There are also images of reclining Buddha, all framed with floral designs. The peculiar position of the entrance hall under an overhanging ledge of rock sheltered from the rain led to the profuse ornamentation. Some tablets from Kogun are similar to Bodh Gaya. You can see that this is from Kogun and this is from Bodh Gaya, which has completely the similar, though it is not a direct copy, but it is, of course, borrowed. The idea is borrowed. Within this cave, early inscriptions have also been found, and one include the phrase, Dun du Wop, that Elizabeth Moore and San Win connect to Dhanyavati. Dhanyavati was the ancient name of the Arakan region. And but this Dhanavati is not the Arakan Dhanavati, but it is the Martaban. Within Motamma, there is another Dhanavati. This is also an example which we find from Bodh Gaya and also from Bagan, not directly related to the cave sites, but where we have Buddha sitting in Bhadrasana. And recently, Nicholas Revere has worked on this motif. And we find that this also, the Bhadrasana motif, where you have the Buddha in Vakhyana Mudra, is similar between the 2 regions. So these are the evidences through which, some of the evidences through which we can understand the kind of linkages. And we find that this Buddhist traditions played a significant role in the formation of Myanmar's culture, and particularly that of Arakan. Buddha's presence in Dhanyavati is projected through a story which narrates that Buddha, accompanied by his disciples, came to Dhanyavati and converted King Chandrasurya. This Dhanyavati is the Arakan Dhanyavati. The Buddha was allowed the making of his image to commemorate the event. This was the widely known Mahamuni image. We have seen that power of the Mahavati temple in the Buddhist world is remarkable. It inspired making of models of the temple. The Shikhara was reproduced in the clay tablets which could be readily transported to distant lands. Jatakas were used as means for publicizing royal support towards Buddhism. Buddhist approaches to merit making found expression in the molded clay tablets and also miniature images which were donated to the monasteries, and these were products of the ideology of merit, which acting as voyaging objects. It transpires from the various case studies that an important agency of interaction between India and Myanmar was undoubtedly Buddhism, which was deeply embedded in the society at that point of time.